Welcome back to another episode of Wednesday Wisdom on the Educational AD Podcast. We want to give a shout out to our two podcast sponsors, We Coach and the Global Community of Women in High School Sports. These are two great organizations that you need to be a part of. Now, before we get to our Wednesday Wisdom guest, let's hear from our podcast sponsors. We want to say thank you to Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack for sponsoring the Athletic Director Toolbox segment of our regular podcast. Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack are a quick, easy, and affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your entire athletic program. Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack also connects you to the 95% of the parents and the student athletes who really love your program and gives them a voice to help demonstrate the importance that a quality athletic experience has for them. Go to athleticsurveys.com and check out their testimonials, or you can email them at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your parents or your student athletes, you're really missing out. Talk to the folks at Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack and let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. We also want to thank Final Forms for their support. Final Forms is the industry leader in registration, but they are so much more than that. Final Forms can help your stakeholders with things like mobile accessibility. They've got reminders for parents about policies and about physicals and about all the forms that come when you have an athlete in the house. Final Forms can also help your coaches with things like communication and attendance. And for athletic directors, Final Forms can help you with eligibility, with rosters, and all the reports that come across your desk. You know, it's time that you talk to a team that's walked in your shoes. To take the next steps and find out what Final Forms can do for you, go to finalforms.com/Jake. That's finalforms.com/Jake to get started with Final Forms. We also want to say thanks to Huddle. Go to huddle.com. Huddle is how the world sees sports. Over 200,000 teams use Huddle to help their athletes and their coaches perform at their very best. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, and as an athletic director, our school was a Huddle school. And our coaches just love the smart cameras, the mobile apps. Of course, they love the analytics, but there's so much more. Go to huddle.com. And you're going to find a complete professional grade solution to the challenges that your athletic department has. At huddle.com, the applications that they have will allow your students, your athletes, and your coaches to do their very best. We believe in sports, and teams believe in Huddle. Join the 6 million users and turn your school into a Huddle school. We also want to say thanks to Gipper. Go to Gipper.com and see how athletic directors and coaches are creating world-class marketing content for their school's social media channels. You can do it in seconds on any device, and you don't need any design experience. It's so easy, even I can do it. Go to Gipper.com, use the podcast code, and tell them you heard about it. That code is ADPOD10. That's ADPOD10, and get 10% off. Gipper.com will allow you to create custom branded content for your school's social media channels. That's Gipper.com. We also want to thank Snap Mobile. Snap Mobile is a complete platform to help athletic directors do their very best. You can build a thriving program and ease some of the administrative duties with the various aspects of the Snap Mobile platform. Snap Raise is their fundraising platform. Our coaches have used it, and it's just fantastic. You can raise thousands and thousands of dollars using the Snap Raise platform. Snap Spend is their secure money management system. Snap Store allows you to buy fan gear for everybody associated with your program. Snap Manage is their website and design platform, and you can find all of this information at onsnap.com. huddle.com. Find out how they can help and support your program. Snap.com. Snap raises the fundraiser, but go to onsnap.com and see how they can help you and your program. And we want to say thanks to Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. Go to hometownticketing.com. They're going to show you how to set up and sell your tickets online, how to scan the attendees that come to your games and collect your revenue. And every step of the way, you're going to have a dedicated client success manager that's providing hands-on support. That's every step of the way. Go to hometownticketing.com. They'll also show you how to set up and sell tickets for things like school dances, school plays and concerts, even graduation. That's hometownticketing.com. Simple and easy online ticketing. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Wednesday Wisdom on the Educational AD Podcast. Our guest today is Michelle Meyer. If you're new to Wednesday Wisdom, Michelle is a longtime NCAA athlete and coach. She is now the NIL director for San Diego State University and all of their sports. She also created the NIL network, and she's kind of our go-to resource for all things NIL. If you're listening to this, we're recording this on Halloween Day, so you're going to hear it in a pretty timely manner. If you're watching it on YouTube, you can see Michelle's great Halloween costume. So we'll make you watch that YouTube video to get that. But Michelle, always great to talk with you. What do you have for listeners today on Wednesday Wisdom?
Yeah, thanks for having me here on Halloween. I am a tournament champion, in case anyone is listening but not watching. My background is all in volleyball, played collegiately, professionally, and coached collegiate beach volleyball. So I've got the get up on from about the 80s, early 90s beach volleyball attire. So I am a champion today. But yeah, I think on the not Halloween front, what I wanted to discuss really is the new guidance that the NCAA recently put out around NIL. So I think it came out, last on the 26th. So it's been about a week for people to digest this. And really what it looks like from the NCAA, we know that their interim policy when it came out was pretty bare bones, right? It had three big pieces. The first being that any NIL deal needed a quid pro quo, so some kind of activity for the compensation. The second one being that nothing in an NIL deal could be contingent on enrollment or continued enrollment at a school. So you couldn't induce an athlete to commit to a school or to continue competing at a school or a university moving forward through an NIL deal. And the third one being that nothing could be contingent on pay for play. So you couldn't write into an NIL contract that, you get a bonus for, I don't know, for every touchdown you throw in a game, you get an extra $1,000 or something like that. No pay for play. And this additional guidance that the NCAA put out there, pretty, it's interesting. It's not really, they're not calling it rules. They're really just calling it guidance, because I think there's still that fear on the NCAA side of bringing on a lot more litigation and lawsuits and whatnot. So they're really trying to, put some guidance around this without necessarily being, these are the cut and dry rules. And I think an interesting piece too, at the end of that guidance, was saying that retroactively, unless something was really egregious that came out through some of their investigations, that there won't be any kind of retroactive punishments for some things that teetered the line but didn't have that additional guidance around it moving forward. So some of the interesting pieces now, it is a lot. I think around the country, everyone is still diving into each bullet point and really understanding what the implications are moving forward. But I wanted to go through just a couple of them and share, some interesting thoughts around them and go from there. So their first kind of box of bullet points is institutional support for student athlete NIL activities. So what can the university do and provide for their athletes around NIL? Now, an interesting piece for me in there is that NCAA came out and said that schools are allowed to administer a marketplace. So there was all this speculation kind of around pre-NIL and even going into this NIL era about some of the businesses. Could a school purchase, let's say a marketplace through an open doors influencer offers this model, no cap sports, where the school is paying a tech company to build out a directory of all their student athletes to make it easier for local businesses, fans to find them and facilitate those deals. That's always been, kind of a gray area. A lot of schools have invested, obviously, in the open doors and influencer and whatnot, but we never really had guidance from the NCAA saying that was good or that was not good. So now schools are allowed to provide that marketplace, which I think is a good just clarification around that rule. They can provide information to student athletes about opportunities that institution has become aware of. Now, for myself sitting here in an NIL administrator role, I really like this one because it had been our process prior that, let's say, a local business reaches out to me and says, hey, I'm interested in working with X athlete. Now, our policy has been, I'm not going to share that information back with the company, the contact information for the athlete. However, I can now green lighted even more to forward that information to the athlete, text it to them and say, hey, here's an opportunity for you. If you would like to move forward with this, please get in touch with this business. Now I will go back to the business and say, hey, I forwarded the information. I've texted the athlete. They'll be in touch in a few days if they're interested. And I think even I can say if they don't, follow up, as we know that student athletes aren't the greatest at keeping up on their emails. They can let me know and I can reach out to the athlete. But that's good news in terms of being able to pass along some of those opportunities and feel good about that. Also, an interesting one was that it says here that it is permissible for schools to promote a student athlete's NIL activity, provided there is no value or cost to the institution. So the example they gave was retweeting or liking a social media post. Now, I still have some questions around this because I was discussing with our football coaches afterwards, which are saying, hey, is it, or actually, let me read the next part on there was saying, basically that it has some rules around how you can promote a specific student athlete's NIL activity or promote a student athlete. And so I feel like those are kind of in conflict with each other because it's one thing to say, hey, we're retweeting that an athlete did a deal with X local restaurant and here is their post for their NIL deal. But then could you in that same turn retweet, a student athlete's merchandise store where they're still making ongoing and continued NIL compensation at that store? Or there's some other examples like that I think is still a bit of a gray area. If an athlete is running a camp or has an upcoming camp or clinic that they're running, can the schools or their team account push that out and encourage people to go sign up? I think we're still kind of seeking some clarity around what that could look like. I know that our football coaches definitely have some questions right out the gates on that one because they, of course, want to support their athletes in their NIL endeavors. And then the last one on there for institutional support makes it permissible for staff members and any employees, coaches, you can purchase items related to a student athlete's NIL deal as long as it is you're not going out and buying their whole merch store. So within reason, you can buy your niece or nephew a lesson with a particular athlete at the institution you work at. You can go purchase a jersey from them. Just don't buy 1,000 jerseys or just don't, pay them more than that going rate. So I think that that's a really good clarification as well, because I think that across the country, some have been doing it, some are going, no, that's illegal. And so to hear that, that's a good thing. So those are kind of the institutional supports. Jake, do you have any questions about any of those or any thoughts or feedback?
Well, does the emergence of NIL, and I know you went through some of the parameters of things that are allowed, not allowed. How does that work with existing NCAA rules? You always hear about a school that gets in trouble for, flying a prospect or their parents out, or, giving them a meal, or, giving them swag. Do those lines get blurred at all, or is it pretty clear between those two parameters, recruits and existing athletes?
Yeah, I think the recruits are still, off limits for NIL deals that are surrounded like for an institution. Now there are quite a few, I think there's 15 or 16 states that allow high school athletes to monetize their NIL. I would say that I think it would get very, the NCAA would probably come and knock it if there was a recruit that was, signed with a local deal that's far away from their hometown that a particular institution is recruiting that athlete. I think that that would be some flags that go up, or even getting involved like the collective of the university before they're officially signed is just, I don't think any place that they'd want to go. I do think it's interesting that, and this would be for current student athletes, but I just saw a business pop up that, or it might be an arm actually of a collective of the school that is making kind of a side fund to cover hotel rooms and like travel for the parents or the family of a particular athlete. Now, the athlete, of course, still has to have the quid pro quo and then fulfill, their obligations for the NIL side. But I think it's can be able to bring in more parents and families and things like that. So that might be a really cool kind of angle that the parents will get to watch their kids play. I don't know. I think that it's interesting the farther I go into this and hear kind of about the situations, of course, that have been going on for the past couple decades, and a lot of athletes' parents never get to come out and watch them actually play in person. So new opportunities there.
You and I have talked about this on previous episodes, but I'm curious, have you seen, I'll phrase it this way, have you seen any improvements as far as NIL impacting, let's say, female sports or, student athletes on, let's say, the non-marquee sports? Is it getting better?
Yeah, I mean, I still think for the next probably 4 to 5 years that it's going to be a lot of work, because I think that those NIL opportunities are going to come at the local level. And again, like local businesses just do not, from even the awareness of what NIL stands for to actually closing their first NIL deal is this massive, massive learning and undertaking. So, it's awareness of what it is, interest in how you do it, and then it's all the other pieces of how do you find athletes, put together a deal, what should you budget, how does the contract look, how do you track your ROI, blah, blah, blah. And so I think in time, as those businesses become more savvy and understand the benefits of working with student athlete, like local student athletes, that'll continue to like dissipate kind of down and out and spread across, versus in the first year, 2 years, of course, it's the revenue generating sports, but it's also all the national brands that have the resources and the understanding to put behind something like this, where they are looking for a massive ROI that is national and not necessarily that more local level. So I think that, it's not quite there yet. I will say, I think that local businesses are at least in the awareness stage now, where potentially they know what NIL stands for, or they've seen some headlines that understand that college athletes can get paid. Now, are they actually interested in putting any kind of budget towards that yet? I don't know. I keep telling, our leadership team here and our coaches, I'm like, I need more examples and like analytics of local activations. There's been, across the country, I think I've only found maybe 5 examples of businesses that engage with student athletes and then put out kind of their increase in traction and viewership and their increase in sales. And like those kind of numbers and analytics are so powerful to put in front of other businesses and say, hey, you're a restaurant just like this restaurant. Well, look at what they got out of this deal. Is that something that you would like to get as well? And we're just not quite there yet. So it's
and that's why your website, is there, to provide that information, hopefully.
Yeah. Yep. And yeah, to try to help those local brands and businesses, because I really do believe that they can get a strong return on investment from engaging with student athletes. Now, I do think it does take time, and it is more complex than probably some other marketing campaigns that they run. And the fear, I think, in the back of their minds, of course, is the last thing they want to do is something incorrect and cause a student athlete their eligibility. Like, can you imagine the local restaurant around a college campus where that happens? And obviously it's not anything they intended to. And honestly, at this point, I don't think there's a way that they really could do it. Like, I think it would be very off the wall for something like that to happen. But you got to remember that these businesses have been told for the last 20 plus years, don't even give a kid a small fries for free, because then he could not play his sport or she could not compete. And, you know, that's the worst PR that a business can get. And I think that still kind of looms over their head too, in terms of engaging in this space. But let me see if there were some other pieces here from the new update that we can chat about a little bit. One thing that I actually thought was super interesting as well is that it explicitly allows employees, coaches, whatnot, to direct their donors and supporters to donate money to the school's collective instead of the school's fundraising department, the development department, which I think is going to cause even more of this between more conflict between the coaching staff, who obviously needs the collective from a recruiting standpoint and that advantage, and then the development department, who is hitting up those same boosters and donors to get money in for season tickets and all the perks and parking over here. And now if a coach is explicitly going out and going, oh, don't do it to the university anymore, go only to our collective, I don't really know how that's gonna manage that relationship, I guess. And I'm curious how kind of leadership teams across the country are going to address that, or athletic directors, because it opened the gates in terms of something coaches weren't sure that they could do before, but it benefits them. And now it's saying explicitly, yep, go ahead, good luck to your development department.
You and I were talking before we started recording. There's several topics came up. I wish we had more time. Maybe talk a little bit about the partnership that you are building around NIL. What's going on with that?
Yeah, so I think it's been 3 months, and I hope for this program to be out already. But with NIL Network, something that I've been working very hard on since about May, which is crazy how long it's been taking, but it's all right, is a partnership program where I'm trying to create a network of trusted NIL companies. So now when I say NIL company, what I mean is not like the local restaurant who's doing a deal with a athlete. I'm talking these businesses that are now involved in this NIL industry, whether that's, a B2B business that's providing the compliance software for a university, or businesses that are working directly with athletes, such as your sports agents, your marketing managers, the NFT platforms, the merchandise platforms, those type of companies. And I'm trying to bring them together under this umbrella of the NIL network as a group of trusted and transparent companies. Now, in order for a company to actually become part of that network, they have to go through what we're calling NIL verified, which is I partnered with an attorney who was a former Power 5 compliance director, so he knows all the NCAA rules in and out, and he will do a business verification with this company. Now, all the business verification, in good standing, we'll check their employees and whatnot. But in addition to that, he also looks at their terms of use, or the standard contract that they're signing student athletes into, to make sure that it is a fair contract, and includes all the pieces that won't make the athlete liable for, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, I don't think I'll ever forget the one time that we talked with our general counsel here, and I read her one of the clauses in a contract that an athlete had brought me at San Diego State, and she goes, holy moly, if an athlete signed that and the company wanted to go after them, they would be liable for up to, I think she said, $150,000 just from signing this little 2-sentence clause. And it was in all the legal language. And I'm going, athletes are not, as much as we'd love for these 18 to 22-year-olds to take their contracts to an attorney and pay $400 or $500 to get it properly vetted, and it's just not a reality of what they're doing right now. So I'm hoping with this program that we'll get some good businesses verified and within the network. And then after that, I'm really trying to promote and share these companies across the country. One of the ideas that I'm probably going to move forward with is this idea of like a NIL virtual fair, which would bring together all the verified companies and go to schools and say, hey, your athletes can opt into this virtual fair webinar for 45 minutes, an hour, whatnot, jump on, and then every company gets a couple minutes to share about their business. Because I think on the administrator side and even the athlete side, they're getting inundated all the time with, hey, we're this NIL company that does this really innovative thing. If you have 30 minutes, 45 minutes to hear me out. And I'll take those calls because this is my main role. But after we finish them, it's like, hey, so can you throw that out to all of your 500 athletes? And as the administrator, I'm going, well, we don't want, like, how am I supposed to vet this company? We don't know, if everything is as should be. If I put them in front of 500 athletes, that is essentially the stamp of approval from San Diego State to say, this is a company that we approve that you should consider working with. And then secondly, being that if let's say the liability piece is totally up, and we're all A-okay with all these companies, even if I have these calls a couple times a week and I just keep inundating our athletes, like, that's not doing the best service to them either, because they're not going to know the difference between all of these different platforms. And they're just going to be like, well, why do you keep sending me all of these things? There's no way I'm going to be on every marketplace or every platform. And so I think bringing these together for, maybe it's once a semester, once a year type opportunity for the athletes to hear out all of these companies, where and then the admin knows that they have been vetted and verified by a third-party company. I think that'll be good for the admin side, the athlete side, and then of course the company side, to be able to get in front of so many athletes and share their services and products. So that is coming down the pipeline. We're looking to launch with between 10 to 15 partners, hopefully in the next couple weeks, but it's been a couple weeks now since July. So here we are.
Well, the best things take time. So, absolutely no hurry. And, we're looking forward to the rollout. Maybe you'll be able to share that on your next Wednesday Wisdom.
I hope so, man. If this continues too much farther into 2023, I don't know if I, but you're right. It is kind of a massive undertaking in terms of there isn't this like verification process in the NIL industry yet. And the problem I see is like there isn't really a barrier to entry either. So a company could, register a domain for $20 and the next day pop up an NIL company. And of course, I want to believe that most people have the best intentions and really are advocates for the athletes. I have the fear on the other side as well. I've seen it on the other side as well. So it's a lot of work, but I think it'll pay off and make sure that we're rolling this out in the most thought out way.
Well, we certainly appreciate everything that you're doing to create greater awareness at all levels, high school and college, of NIL. Let's go and talk about that. If one of our listeners wants to reach out, pick your brain, or go to the website, how do they do that? What's the information?
Yeah, so I have a website's nilnetwork.com. I'm probably most active on Instagram in terms of social media platforms, although I'll say that I haven't been great on that recently, but that's NIL Network. And then I also host every Wednesday evening open Q&A where anyone around the country can just hop on to the Google Meet for about a half hour and ask whatever questions they have about NIL. So typically, there's usually 5 to 10 people on that. It's Wednesday evenings, 4:30 Pacific time. So I know it gets a little late for the East Coasters. But I think that's a good opportunity if you'd like to ask any question about NIL or to meet some other people too who are interested in working in the industry. I know that some have used it as like a networking opportunity. They come out on every Wednesday and they just meet other people who are interested in the space. So it's a fun time, super casual, and yeah.
And, for listeners, if you have some NIL things going on at your state, particularly at the high school level, log on to that conversation and share and, help grow everyone's awareness about how NIL is impacting, your teams, your athletes, your school across the country. Michelle Meyer, NIL Network and San Diego State University Athletics, thanks as always for sharing on Wednesday Wisdom, and happy Halloween and all the best moving forward.
Thanks, Jake.
For listeners, remember the Zoom recordings of these interviews get uploaded to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We appreciate you listening. Come back next Wednesday for more Wednesday Wisdom and just about every day on the Educational AD Podcast. We'll see you next time. Again, always great to talk to Michelle and NIL. So that's the NIL Network for Michelle Meyer. Before we go, I want to say thanks to our sponsors. These are all companies that I have personally used with just one exception. I'll give them a shout out first. Hometown Ticketing. I retired as an AD just as online ticketing was coming into vogue, but I've talked to hundreds of athletic directors across the country who all swear by Hometown Ticketing. Go to hometownticketing.com and start selling your tickets digitally. We want to thank Wall of Fame by Vital Signs. If you're looking for a great way to display your school records or your school's Hall of Fame, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. I want to thank Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your parents or your student athletes, you're really missing out. Go to athleticsurveys.com or email them at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. I want to say thanks to Sideline Interactive indoor scoring tables and video boards. We've got a Sideline Interactive indoor scoring table in our gym, and it's just fantastic. Go to sidelineinteractive.com for more information. I want to say thanks to Gipper. Go to gipper.com, start creating world-class marketing content for your school's social media channels. Use the podcast code, and that's ADPOD10, and get 10% off. Gipper.com. I want to say thanks to Huddle. As a football coach, I used Huddle. As an athletic director, our school was a Huddle school. Go to huddle.com for more information. I want to say thanks to Final Forms, the industry leader in forms and registration. Final Forms can help your stakeholders, your coaches, and you as an athletic director. Go to finalforms.com/Jake for more information. And finally, we want to say thanks to Snap Mobile. Snap has a huge platform with a number of different aspects that can help you as an AD. Go to onsnap.com. Onsnap.com, one of their most popular is their fundraiser. Our coaches used it, and it was just fantastic, and they've helped schools just like yours raise thousands of dollars. That's onsnap.com. Thanks again for listening to Wednesday Wisdom. We'll see you next week on just about every day for new content on the Educational AD Podcast. Take care.